All right, y'all. So we are live. Good evening, everybody. Yours truly, Dr. Pierre, favorite board certified internist, host of The Real Physician Reacts. Now, if this is your first time watching this live or your 100th time, first of all, if it's 100th, shout out to you. Live, I am a board certified internist, and every week we get on here and we kind of talk about the events that happen. And I just kind of give really the real life of, conversation that a physician would have after something goes down like this. Now, typically when news comes across my feeds, it either gets sent to me or it hits my social media feed. And I haven't done this in a couple of weeks. So I was like, all right, what am I going to talk about this week? There's a lot to talk about. I'm in the state of Florida. Our governor's doing crazy stuff in the state of Florida. Lots of stuff to touch on. But of course, as not only an internist, but also a public health professional, I got my degree not only in public health, but also osteopathic medicine. The public health aspect always hits me. And, what more of a public health disaster can we talk about? And no, I'm not talking about, trains crashing and derailing, because that's a problem too, gun violence. So as I speak, depending on when you watch this, especially if you catch this on my YouTube channel, where I will put the recording on our YouTube channel. If you're joining, make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel as well. We're going to talk about the most recent mass shooting that occurred in the state of Tennessee, in particular Nashville. And I just want to kind of give you just a quick number, just so we're aware of just how bad things are going, right? As I'm recording this right now, we have had 130, think about this, 130 mass shootings in this country. Now, again, I'm not here to debate, whether you want to keep 1,000 guns in your backyard or not. Not even here to debate that. Like, if we just say that out loud, that here in this country, we've had 130 mass shootings here in this country, as a public health professional, that should scream, there's a problem. And in this most recent case where you had 6 people, including 3 children, pass away, unfortunately get murdered by another assailant using a gun and everything else, we now kind of tack on to the number one cause for death here in this country for children. Like, I'm not talking about a disease. I'm not talking about famine. Gun violence. Gun violence continues to reign supreme as the number one way your child is going to die in this country, if we had to run it by statistics. And here I am not only as a physician, but as a public health professional, having again to witness a slew of people who are not and should never be used to hearing that children are dying, right? I say this all the time. As a physician, I go into this field, especially the field I'm in, I go in this field understanding that, all right, I may take care of someone who might not live, right? And I have to psychologically prepare myself. But you have everyday people who are going to work, going to school, just living, and they have to turn on the news and hear that more kids are dying while attending elementary school. That's just wild enough as it is, just to even think about. That we are here again in this country, and again, this is a public health emergency. We've had a few public health emergencies. Unless you've been living under a rock, COVID, public health emergency, right? Guns, public health emergency, right? These are things that continue to plague the public, and unfortunately, because of the country we live in, we deal with this issue where it doesn't matter, because those who are in power to make some type of change ain't in no rush. Well, we know the party. We know the party who's not in any rush to make that change happen. So as a physician, as a healthcare professional, the only solace that I can give people, who are in my sphere of influence is, all right, how do you deal with that? So imagine that now I have to give talks and I have to have conversations with, hey, like, how do you live with the fact that you might send your child to elementary school, but they may not come back? Like, think about that. Like, you may send your child to elementary school to learn recess and learn how to spell some words, and they may not come back. Like, that's the reality that we're living in now. Because we already know those in power, especially in that particular, the ones who are, are fully backed by gun lobbyists and everything else, ain't gonna change anything. So, they're gonna post their tweets, they're gonna post their Facebook messages, they're gonna send their videos about sending solace to all the families, but then at the end of the day, they're gonna wrap it right back up and go back to normal. So as a healthcare professional, things that we have to do is not only educate our audience, right, or whoever our influence is. Hey, yes, this is not normal, and it's okay to feel like overwhelmed, right? Because a lot of people will tell you that they're numb, like, oh, it happens so much, I'm numb to it. I can assure you, 130 times you hear a mass shooting occurs, you're probably going to numb to it too until it happens in your backyard, right? Like, it's one of those things where in their mind, as long as it doesn't happen around where I'm at, like, I'm numb. They're not necessarily numb. They're just resolved with the fact that, man, I just hope that what's going on in this city, in that state does not happen here. But the all likelihood that there's a possibility, because like I said, number one cause of death for kids. And I see your comments. We'll get to the comments. Number one cause of death for kids here in this country is going to be gun violence. That's just a reality that it is. So I tell my community members, hey, understand that it is okay to feel sad. It is okay to want to detach, from the news. The same way where during this pandemic, people were saying, hey, you know what? I'm tired of hearing this pandemic. I'm not going to watch the news no more. The same way people were in that thought. Like, I understand that people are like, all right, I'm not even going to turn the news right now. Another school shooting. I don't even want to think about that. Why? Because I still got to send my kids to school. So they're like, all right, if I still got to send my kids to school, I'm not even going to think that that's a possibility, even though it possibly is. And then understanding that, again, gun safety, right, and being safe from guns, what does that mean, right? We hear all the time these arguments, like if you look at my comments right now, guns don't kill people, right? People kill people, guns don't kill. But like when people say guns don't kill people, then how are these people all dying, right? Like how are they all dying if guns don't kill people, right? So we have to be honest with ourselves, right? Like if we're gonna make any movement, right? So when you hear detractors, and again, unfortunately, especially in this case here, I'll read some of this is from NPR. What we know about this Nashville, a deadly shooting at an elementary school. It still sucks that you even can type out that sentence in 2023. That I have to read about a mass shooting that occurs at an elementary school. 6 people, including 3 children, were killed in the shooting. The suspect attacker was killed by police within minutes of the first call, right? So we don't have a situation like we had in Texas where the police were outside and they're like, nah, I don't want no parts of what's going on in there. The police were like, nah, I'm going in there because I might have a kid. One of my kids might be one of these kids in here. I'm going in there. So the police went in, shout out to them, right? The police, like I said, sometimes the police don't get a good rap, right? So shout out to them. They went in, they said, I'm not going to allow what happened in Texas happen over here. So they went in, they did what they had to do, right? The shooting occurred at the Covenant School, a private elementary school on the grounds of Covenant Presbyterian Church in Nashville's Green Hills neighborhood, right? Again, this is a private elementary school, right? So for those who are like, oh, it's just a bad neighborhood or it happened here, like boom, like that excuse out of the wood. Our community's heartbroken. We are grieving tremendous loss, are in shock coming out of terror that shattered our school and church, right? So you have this crossroads where church is affected. A certain class, again, a private school, a private elementary school is probably going to be a higher socioeconomic status of parents as well as students. And a lot of times, obviously, we talk about the 6 who died, right? But imagine the people who are in that 6th circle, right? Their friends, their family members, right? Who are having to process witnessing their classmates, their friends, their family members get killed going to school. And now sometime next week or whatever, someone's going to say, hey, it's time for you to go, get your spelling bee test on. It's time for you to go, get your reading comprehension test, right? Like, that's not a normal situation. These kids, those families, traumatized for life. They're always going to be able to associate the fact that I went to school to learn to spell because, and my best friend ain't come home. And the teacher wants me to act like everything is normal. Politics will go on like everything is normal. Again, that's just not normal. And again, I mentioned, according to Gun Violence Archive, there has been 130 mass shootings this year, right? And for those who, again, when things like this happen, I know a lot of us, like, there's some people who go to run because they want to see the visuals. I never need to see a visual of people getting killed, right? I never need it. Like, I work in healthcare. People die in front of me. Right? Like, people die in front of me. Like, I'm sometimes the last person that person is able to look at before they're conscious, before they die. Right? So I don't need to run to the internet to go see a picture, to go see a video when I hear a story like this. Like, that's the last thing I want to experience, right? That's the last thing I want downloaded in my memory bank. But in this country, again, we become so, again, walled off to the reality of the situation that we're like, another shooting. Like, we say another shooting. Oh, the politics is fixed. Nothing to do about it, right? Like, and that's just something that, as a healthcare professional, as a public health professional, like, we can never be content with, right? We can never be content with, the gun lobbyists and those who are in their back pocket, they're not going to vote. They're not going to make any changes anyway, even if, at least at this current moment, that's the reality. At this current moment, yes, that may be a reality that the NRA, which again, is such a despicable organization, because every time a mass event like this happens, they can't wait to run and be like, hey, guns don't kill nobody, guys. Second Amendment rights. Like, they can't wait to tell you that. It's such a despicable organization. Again, a whole bunch of this. I really have nothing good to say about the NRA, right? And then, I'm just reading here. It just kind of gives the victims, right? So they named the victims: Evelyn Dickenhouse, 9 years old; Haley Scruggs, 9 years old; William Kenny, 9 years old. Then you had Cynthia Peak, a teacher. She was 61. Catherine Kuntz, identified as the head of the Covenant School. So I guess that may be like the principal. Mike Hill worked as a janitor at the police, right? So at the school, right? So again, we had a janitor, teacher. You had the head boss of the church school, and 3 kids who are all 9 years old. Again, like, it's. And this is a quote. Like, look at how terrible this quote is. Evelyn Dickenhouse at 9. Her sister says, "I don't want to be an only child. I don't want, like imagine you having to be a 9-year-old processing that your sister died and got killed and murdered at school, right? And the only thing you can think about is, I don't want to be an only child. Like, it don't even hit you, like, how ridiculous and difficult it is from that perspective there. Like, someone said I missed a great convo. Yeah, no, I definitely wish. Yesterday was crazy busy for me. So it's just again, this was a shooting at my son's school yesterday. Oh my God! So Dr. Keisha said there was a school shooting at her son's school just yesterday morning, right? Like, said there was a school shooting at her son's school just yesterday morning, right? Like, that's just. Like it should be extremely infuriating. Hey Millie, how you doing? It should be extremely infuriating the level of kind of content that a huge segment of this population is, right? And especially those who are in the power that they're in. That 3 people, 9 years old, right, who went to school to go do like 9 years old, right? My kid, I have 3 children. One's 10, 2 of them are 7, right? So this person might be, these kids, again, 3rd graders, right? 3rd graders, right? Can't come home because we live in a country that makes it so easy for us to get guns and pull off a mass killing and then walk off like the sunset. Like, all right, I'm cool. Like that's it, right? Like, it's just, no, that's terrible, right? Yeah, it's sad how desensitized we are getting all of this. Yeah, no, it's like I said, I always, like, the desensitization, like saying, I always tell people, like, especially as a physician, and one who works in a hospital, one who works in an acute care center, and even prior to COVID, who was used to people dying in front of them, I used to tell people that was crazy. Like, that's crazy. Like, you shouldn't be used to someone dying from you, right? Like, you shouldn't be able to kind of turn off a mental switch. But again, in this field of healthcare, especially depending on where you're practicing and how you're practicing, if you don't do that, that will crumble you and break you and make it so that when you leave the hospital doors, you can't function. So you have to learn that. But you have just in real time, people across the country, people who never should have this much in close personal relationship with death, continues to have to learn that, like, all right, another school shooting. Let me just change the channel. Because in their minds, like, all right, if I change the channel, I'm not going to have to think about the fact that 3 kids went to school, 3 kids went to school and ain't come home. Like, I'm not going to have to think about that. And then, of course, you see the reverberations. You see the news after where we have to now go and start praising the cops for, like, going in and doing their job pretty quickly. Which, again, shout out to them, right? Shout out to them, right? Like, I'm ecstatic because we don't know. Like, we don't know where this 6 could have ended. So shout out to them that they did that. But again, we're living in a country where, like, that is getting praised, and 100% of us aren't infuriated that can still continue to occur. And more importantly, again, Dr. Keisha mentioned that there was a shooting after school just yesterday, that we don't even have to give it a week or 2 and something else is going to happen in some different part of the country. Like, some of us are so, like, our mindset is so set that, like, I can't even really focus on that over there because I already know something's going to happen somewhere. I already know something's going to happen somewhere, somehow, right? And someone said, invest in mental health and security instead of supporting other countries, right? So again, that's great, right? Because again, obviously, because what I love, especially when I see spin happening, immediately they mention that this killer was going through some emotional disorder. I don't know what the emotional disorder is, but if you're buying guns, multiple guns, to go after somebody, you're definitely not in, I guess, the quote unquote right state. But immediately they throw out this emotional disorder, right? To, again, kind of pivot and say, hey, it's not the guns. It's not the guns doing it. It's the fact that, hey, you know what? The mentation ain't on there, right? The mental stability isn't there. And that's what was the problems, right? So, and even the same person mentioned, like, have stronger gun laws. Like, we can't even mention that, because you start talking about, like, let's have stronger gun laws. People start telling you about amendments being taken away. And I used to think, right? I used to think they were kind of crazy, right? I was like, wow, like, people are, like, really go hard for these amendments until the pandemic hit. Because once the pandemic hit and you had people lining the streets begging, right, to take their mask off, to put themselves at risk for a respiratory disease. Like, once I saw that with my own eyes, like, people were storming school board meetings, storming hospitals, right? Like putting picket fences around hospitals and healthcare centers saying, I want to wear my mask. I want to go eat in a restaurant. I don't care that this respiratory virus is out there and we don't really have a good, like, stake on it. Once I saw people doing that, I already knew that, especially in this country here, it's a different breed. It is a different breed because people will go for their rights, and that's all you need to hear. Once you start talking and mentioning, let's have some stronger gun laws, or just more common sense gun laws, they run to their rights. Like, oh, don't take my rights away. Like, don't take my rights away. Because that's the one thing you can't do in this country. Look at January 6th, right? One thing you can't do in this country, have someone perceive that their rights are being taken away. Because they go off to the deep end. Off to the absolute deep end here. And of course, people, like, I'm reading this report here off NPR. Police say they don't have any motive for the shooting. At least at this time, this might be an older reading, because I think there's subsequent articles that came. That's funny. Melly says freedoms become freedoms. Yeah, no. Like I said, again, I knew we were just playing a different game when people were begging to have a respiratory virus, right? Like when people said, like, no, you can't restrict me from my right from having this respiratory virus. Right? Like, that's what I knew was different. Let me see here. Drake said, and of course, and again, like I said, what I don't like, but the parts of this story here, which again, just create check marks for me against the detractors, right? Here you have this mass shooting that occurs at a private elementary school, which means likely socioeconomic status was elevated, right? So this wasn't a quote unquote poor neighborhood. You have a person here, right, who legally purchased all their guns, right? So you can't say like there was some illegal means occurring that brought these guns out, right? And they were able to do it, right? So you had all of these things where like when they say like, oh, what about Chicago, right? Like, now what happens if someone says, what about Nashville, right? What if my phrase is, what about Nashville? Like, don't talk about Chicago, right? Don't talk about St. Louis. Don't talk about New Orleans. What about Nashville? What's happening in Nashville now? Like, how can a mass shooting happen in Nashville? How can a mass shooting happen in Uvalde, Texas, right? Like, how can these mass shootings happen in Buffalo? Like, how can these mass shootings keep happening, right? And then in a 2-week span, it just like silence occurs, and we just kind of wait for the next one, right? Like, again, as I record this, 130 shootings this year. We haven't finished the first quarter of the year. Like, we have not finished the first quarter of the year, and we already got 130 of them. 130 mass shootings. And of course, the reason why it's up, right? One of the things that occurred during COVID and during the pandemic and during the lockdown is that because a lot of people were forced to stay in that house, right? You saw a lot of these things were down, right? A lot of these mass shootings, everything was down because we weren't able to, we didn't have the opportunity to go out and do some of the things that we were doing. And I know a few of my friends who are like, yeah, you know what? Like, that school stuff, like, I'd rather homeschool my kids. Not homeschool my kids because I think my education, I could do a better job educating my kids and everything else. So, like, I'd rather homeschool my kids because I don't want to send them to a place that they may not come back to. So for safety reasons, I'd rather homeschool my kids. Now, you want to homeschool the kids because, the education system is much better. And that's a whole different discussion, which, again, I agree with. I got a friend, she homeschooled her kids. They do so positives are there. But when you're saying, I want to homeschool my kids because I'm so afraid of the dangers in that school, to the point now when I drop my kids off at school right now, there's police presence and noticeable police presence too. It's not like, oh, okay, there's a little car. Like, nah, there's police presence stacked at again, my kids are in elementary school. There's police presence chilling in elementary schools now. Police have to protect elementary schools from God knows what. Like, that should not be on our bingo card. Like, we should not be okay with the fact that the police have to protect an elementary school across the country. And yeah, it can happen in any school too. That's what makes it worse. At any school, right? This again, elementary, middle, high school, a student that's in the school, someone that's outside the school that comes to the school, right? Like that's just terrible. That is just terrible to think about. Public schools are not just physical and safe; they are taught by unqualified the wrong things, right? Again, that's a whole different discussion, right? Whether, especially some of these schools and the structure of the schools and the financial supports at schools, like that's a whole different discussion, right? Because obviously, those who may not know, the school funding is based on your community. So if you are in a low socioeconomic community, guess what? The school can't get as much funding. Versus if you're in a higher socioeconomic community with, developments and everything else, guess what? Those schools look great, right? It's intentional, right? It's not by accident that that's how schools are funded. It's not by accident, right? So that's a whole different discussion in and of itself, right? We can't normalize shootings at school, right? We can't normalize shootings at school, right? We can't normalize shootings at the mall. We can't normalize shootings like at parties and clubs and like these are things that we should not be normalizing. And especially when it comes to these types of shootings and then the type of weapons that are used, we should not feel good for that. Like we should not feel good for that whatsoever. But I know, unfortunately, and really it's a defense mechanism that a lot of us are developing, that a lot of us by a week or two are going to be like, okay, all right, on to the next one. Like, rest in peace for the kids, but we got to go, right? So, because, if you ask someone, right, like when Uvalde, Texas occurred, right, for a lot of people, that is so old news for a lot of people that they're just, that thing is checked out. And we know that right now it's hot. Like, we know that the conversation right now will be big and everyone talking about it. But we know that, again, in a couple weeks, the likelihood that something else occurs that unfortunately will overshadow this is so high, right? Like, if those, especially if you've been catching the news, our former president just got indicted, right? Like, wait till that news really pops off, right? You'll see, right? The news can only highlight so many things, right? So you'll see, former president indictment and the news surrounding that, and you'll see this Nashville mass shooting go down that way as well. And politician apathy is just, and what's worse is, I wish, right? I wish, especially those who are in the back pocket of the NPR, I wish they would stay silent, right? Like, I wish we never heard from them when these things occur, but they're usually the first people to tweet out something, to send a video, to send their condolences. They're usually the first people to do it. Because, again, in their eyes, they're like, oh, let me just send this message out, let these folks know, like, I kind of feel bad for them, but, like, the NPR and the NRA, they pay me a lot of money, so like all that gun law talk ain't happening. Like, sorry, it ain't it. So that probably kills me more than anything else. Like, knowing that you have these instances where when it goes down, the same politicians are going to say the same things. They're going to tell you the same stuff. Guns don't kill people. Let's focus on the mental health. And let's continue that train of thought. All right, let's focus on mental health. Do you plan on putting more money towards mental health? No. Okay. Do you plan on putting more money in these schools to make sure the schools are well funded and the socioeconomic status really isn't an issue? No. So it's just all for fodder, right? Like, it's just all. It's absolutely terrible. The country is again, it's weird, right? Because the country is divided, but it's more of a financial thing, right? It's not necessarily a, Republican, Democrat, or, conservative, liberal. It's money, right? It's enough money to make it so that a mass shooting like this occurs. Like, this is how I always think about it, especially in the healthcare. Like, think about it in the healthcare, right? Like, Me and a lot of my colleagues deal with this now, right? We have, COVID. COVID did what COVID does and continues to do as we speak. And you have a slew of people, a good contingent of people who, especially for those, like myself, who are pro-vax and everything else, right? Who absolutely hate everything we say, right? Not only absolutely hate everything we say, they want us, right? They want us to be responsible for any any bad news they hear. They can't wait to run to us for us to be the defending man. Oh, hey, I saw you were pushing that COVID vaccine. What about this? What about that? Like, they can't wait. Trust me, I know, because anytime there's any COVID related news, COVID vaccine related news, they're in my mentions, right? They're in my mentions. They're commenting on videos that I made like 3-6 months ago. Like, they can't do it. But something like this will occur and no one runs to, especially, of the people who you would think of sound mind, no one runs to those same Republicans. Again, that's what it is, right? No one runs to them and be like, hey, like, you collected money from the NRA. Like, look what happened. Like, what are you going to do about it? Like, no one holds them accountable. Like, I couldn't even imagine if the COVID vaccine was the number one cause of death for children, how this country would act. Like, just think about that statement. If I said, hey, you know what? The COVID vaccine continues to be the number one killer for children here in this country. Like, if I said that, if that was like an actual fact, people would be in such an uproar. It'd be like January 6 times 10, right? But when I say guns are the number one cause for children death in this country, those same people who are January 6ing, like, are nowhere to be found. Nowhere to be found. They're like, nah, my guns. You don't take my guns away. Don't take my guns away. Like, nowhere to be found, right? So that's just the hypocrisy that typically is found, that people put the healthcare professionals and just healthcare in general as such a different stratosphere in what they expect versus what their politicians are, right? Like, oh yeah, and ban books, right? And mind you guys, y'all know I'm in the state of Florida. My governor is Ron DeSantis, who I think is the worst governor ever, right? This guy's gonna ban everything. Like, he's trying to ban everything. Books, DEI, minority. You're talking about minority stuff? Ban that too. Like, CRT, ban that too. Like, anything that looks like diversity, he's trying to get up out of there. Like, I got an email the other day that I'm part of the NPHC, Iota Phi Theta Fraternity Incorporated, 1963. And I got an email today that says that, based off what's happening, he possibly could ban the National Panhellenic Council and the fraternities within that, right? Like, this is what I have to deal with in Florida, right? But this is what a politician could do. Yeah, Florida. Yeah, Florida's just a different game. Right. So this is what we have to, like, this is our same guy who's fighting with Disney. This is our same guy who just fights with everybody. Like, so I understand, like, when politicians are playing the game that they play, it can be extremely dangerous for a lot of people. Extremely dangerous for a lot of people. Right. And again, like, as I talk, right, this again, and I said this on a live earlier this week, I'm talking about, like, hey, let's, like, think of something to do to work with guns, right? They don't want no parts of it. Those same people who want no parts of any discussion with gun regulation are telling women, like, what they can't do with their bodies. And that don't even eat at them. That don't even, it don't even make them feel weird that they could say, hey, the guns, do whatever you want with the guns. But the women, no. The women, you better not. Like, don't, and again, it's the same crowd. It's literally the same crowd. Like, it's just boggling to me. It just boggles my mind that that's what we have to deal with. We have to deal with this hypocrisy of don't do anything, give all of the rights and freedoms to this item, to this gun that is the number one killer for kids in this country. But the women, they better not think about doing whatever they want to do with their bodies. They better not even think about it. Like, that better not even come across their mind. Like, the women don't, Yeah, their mental gymnastic creel. Yeah, that's what it is. That's all it is, right? The mental gymnastic that they're able to play is so frightening, right? It's like, I don't know, man. Like, it's, and again, so I get on here, right? Because yes, another mass shooting is going to occur, right? Like, that's just based off the numbers, right? Again, we're not a quarter into this year. We already got 130. The likelihood that we're going to, and, Dr. Keisha came on earlier, said there was another one yesterday, right? The likelihood that there's going to continue to be more is so high that you'd be a fool to bet against it. You'd be a fool to bet against the fact that we're going to have another mass shooting by the end of April, right? You'd be a fool to bet against that, right? But because we know that, we cannot continue to be content. Because again, I feel personally strong, man, especially with the generation. I'm 40 years old, right? So the generation, behind me, and like how invigorated they are about getting stuff done. I know it may look bleak now, but I fully believe, like, once they get to 40, like, this country's gonna be in such a different ball game, because those same Republicans and those same NPR enthusiasts and those same people who are like, I don't care about women, like, those same people, I don't think they're gonna be here for long. Right, it's gonna take some time, right? Like, it sucks that it's gonna take some time, but it's gonna take some time. But we're gonna get there, right? So I always champion the fact that, like, yeah, it sucks right now. Like, it 100% sucks right now. It 100% sucks that we have to talk about another mass shooting. It 100% is absolutely terrible, right? That we have to get used to hearing our elementary kids dying. They were trying to go for a spelling test. They can't even go for their spelling test because they're dying, right? Like, and we know that people who are completely content with that, because financially it would be a death sentence for them if they weren't. Like, we know that's the case. But yeah, no, I fully am empowered. Because I know that even again, I'm 40, that even the younger generation of physicians are different, right? The younger generation of medical students are different. The younger generation of pre-meds are different, right? So, like, and we just had Match, right? So, which is always a great time to see all of our new medical students about to be residents, right? Always a good time. So, like, and I just know that they have a different vibe. So I just continue to push forward. I continue to kind of yell in the wind, even though it may seem for naught right now. Like, again, I give my condolences to to another set of families. Again, I give my condolences to the friends of the family. I give my condolences to everyone who will be affected in that area. Even when the news cycle isn't shining on them anymore, and it has to shine on another one. Oh yeah, someone said the best. I'm 20 years old. School shootings are all I know, right? Yeah. Like, I'm 40, and there was a school shooting. Like, we're at the point now where a lot of us are maybe like 2 or 3 degrees away of knowing someone who was affected by a school shooting or went to a school where there was a school shooting. Like, it's that rampant here. It was my medical school. Middle school. It was my middle school, and there was a school shooting with a teacher, rest in peace, Mr. Gruno, right? Passed away, right? Kid brought a gun, shot him, right? Like a lot of us are like 2 or 3 degrees away of just knowing someone or being personally affected by a school shooting. Like, that's how common it is over here, right? Like, and we're just content with that. And then you hear people say, oh, you take the guns, it will be nice. Like, nah, because there's places with stricter gun laws, and there's no, like, mass knife attacks. Like, that doesn't make any sense whatsoever, right? Like, yeah. And like I said, I don't have a gun, right? I don't have a gun. I don't know how easy it is to get a gun, but people keep saying it's extremely easy to get a gun. But again, here you have a person who they say was going through an emotional disorder, whatever that means, was able to get 5 different guns in a short time frame, and, like, wow, it's wild. Exactly. Saving children from bullets should not, and it should never be a debate. It should never be a debate. And again, people, And yeah, you have these regular people thinking that they're trying to defend themselves. Like, who are you defending from? Like, what do you think is going to happen? Like, that's a whole conversation we can have. But like, they're stocking up on all these guns or want to make sure their rights for their guns are there. But like, what are you defending for? What are you in preparation for that we don't know about? Like us people who don't have a gun. Like, what are you preparing for? Let us know. I may have. If you're telling me I need to get a gun too, let me know. But like, none of you guys are giving me a good reason to be having a gun, right? Like none of you are going to be superheroes and running into elementary schools like these cops did, right? To stop this assailant. Like, y'all not doing that. So what y'all need all the guns for, right? It's just crazy. All right, y'all. Like, it's been an hour. And I'm yours truly, Dr. Barry, man. I appreciate y'all for joining the live. We do this every Thursday evening. Yeah, interesting. Mental health should be addressed. But again, whenever they say mental health, it's such a smoke screen, right? And it's such a diversion. One, because they don't really care about mental health. Because if they care about mental health, they wouldn't take money from the mental health, right? We'll talk about it another time. You're truly Dr. Barry Pierre. Thank you for joining this week's episode of Real Physician Reacts. Again, we're dealing with another mass shooting. We're a country who is content with kids dying, and that's extremely unfortunate, right? So I'm gonna see you guys later. Make sure you like, follow if you missed it. I am gonna be posting this on my YouTube page, likely tomorrow morning ish. So make sure you're like and subscribe for the YouTube page, especially if the same politicians are trying to ban TikTok. Holding this discussion, right? So y'all be blessed. Y'all have a great night.